Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. So, huge fight coming up with Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields. And the thing about this, right? Women's boxing is making a lot of noise. And that's what you want to see, right? You want to see that. Also, this is the season for the Undisputed distinction. And that's what you want to see. You want to see these champions come together who are unified and come together and fight to get one face, one name, in the words of Deontay Wilder. But there's a fight that's coming up between Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall for the Undisputed Middleweight Championship. And this is a huge, huge fight. But the thing about this fight is when we think about undisputed champions, we more or less think about the men. And with these women and the legacies that they're trying to cement at this moment, you know, you can't help but take a look back at some of those undisputed middleweight champions that came before them to get an idea of just what lane are they placing themselves into by not only taking this fight, but for whoever comes out victorious. This is a huge step in the right direction for these women, both to go down in history, but in particular one to be identified and awarded the crown of Undisputed Middleweight Champion. So going all the way back to 1963, and you guys can read this for yourself, so I'm not going to read it all to you. This is when there was only two belts, the WBA and WBC. So you can see just how far back it goes, where it was a two-belt era. You had the two belts, you were undisputed. And as you make your way down some of the names, you may not be familiar with a guy named Dick Tiger and Nino Benvenuti in 1968. But once you get into 1970, you'll see like Carlos Monzon. Everybody should know that name. You may not be familiar with all his fights, but that's a name you hear quite regularly when you hear people talking about boxing and great boxers from the past. So just think that Savannah Marshall or Clarissa Shields is going to be put in that same lane as a Carlos Monzon. And as you come down a little further, look at the dates. Another name that should jump right out at you, September 27th, 1980, third one from the bottom, is Marvelous Marvin Hagler. And we all know Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Him and Hearns, him and Leonard. Those guys had, historic fights, amazing fights, and had amazing careers. And when you think about Marvelous Marvin Hagler, I can't remember if he lost his first 2 or 3, but he lost his first professional boxing match, if I remember correctly. To lose that first professional boxing match and to not get discouraged and come back and go on an amazing run of remaining undefeated, that's called finding a way to win. That's called being honest with yourself, taking a look at what maybe you did wrong, or let's say you didn't do anything wrong, right? You go back to the drawing board after a loss, and you're like, okay, I didn't do anything wrong. I should have won that fight. But that's where you go back and you say, you know what? If depending on who you have in your corner, they may say, hey, there's nothing else for you to change. You won that fight. Don't worry about it. Nah. You know what? There's still work to be done. Because now you got to go back and you need to make sure that you work so hard that that doesn't happen to you anymore. That you're not going to let it go to the judges anymore. You're taking it out the judges' hands. And that's what Marvin Hagler did. He took those decisions out of the judges' hands. And he wasn't a boxer-puncher. He was more of the brawler/swarmer. And those are the guys who get in close, man, and they just unload on you. And he had an amazing engine, an amazing dedication. But when you think about Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall, and these guys fighting in the middleweight division, you can't help but when you look at them and draw a comparison, probably if anyone was more like a Marvin Hagler, and now don't come and blast me in the comments, but I'd probably say Savannah Marshall is more of the swarmer / brawler. She can box, but Clarissa Shields isn't really a swarmer / brawler. She's not trying to walk you down necessarily. So I would say that, to me, Savannah Marshall kind of would align more with Marvin Hagler. Not saying that she's the one that's going to end up in this lane. I'm just saying what I think stylistically. But to me, it's just a real compliment to potentially for one of these women to be placed in the same lane as a Marvin Hagler, as a Bernard Hopkins, which everyone should know about the alien. A man was fighting until he was 70 years old and whipping these young boys' butts. In particular, John Pascal. He got the business from Bernard. But Bernard Hopkins eventually had to call it quits when he got knocked out those ropes. Yeah, I mean, like I said, you can't beat Father Time, and Bernard Hopkins took it as far as he could. But I think Bernard Hopkins had like a 17, 18, 19 consecutive title defense run. Pretty impressive. But then after Bernard Hopkins, you got Jermaine Taylor. And Jermaine Taylor was, if you don't know who Jermaine Taylor is, right? He was an amazing fighter, Olympian, super strong jab. Man hit like a horse, man. Strong middleweight. But man, you just don't know what's going on in people's personal lives. And what Jermaine Taylor reminded me of, you guys know there was that story recently in the news about that ex-NBA player, fair-skinned guy with red hair. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I'm not going to Google it. But it kind of reminds me of someone like that, who you're watching them on TV one day and they just look amazing playing their sport. And it's the same thing with Jermaine Taylor. Looked amazing in that boxing room. And then, you just really stop paying attention. And then when you revisit that athlete's, name or whatever is going on with them, and then you see like kind of mental health issues and legal troubles, and you start wondering, how the hell did that happen? There were no signs. And that's kind of the situation with like a Jermaine Taylor. He just would never know that he had these things going on with him, And I think when he took that loss, who beat Jermaine Taylor? Paul Frock. He talked about a couple of things that, I don't get into that on my channel, but he said a couple of things. I was like, man, what the hell's going on with him? You lost your loss. It doesn't matter whatever about the individual who beat you. You lost the fight. And I think he couldn't recover from that. And then he had the other issues. But nevertheless, he was a guy, if he would have kept his head on straight, he could have lasted a lot longer in the sport. And when you look at Clarissa Shields and Katie Taylor, these ladies are going to go on to do great things no matter whether they win or lose. But I'm going to be honest with you. When you think about a guy like Jermaine Taylor, now I'm not saying these two are going to totally just, lose their minds if they take a defeat in this fight. But I could see it really bothering one of them or whoever loses a great deal to where they get a little depressed, a little discouraged, and kind of want to disappear from the scene for a while. Because, man, social media is crazy, man. They'll rip you, and they don't let up. And people sit behind their computers, and I get it. Sometimes when I'm doing videos, I had to catch myself because it's easy to be negative and try to break people down. But that's not really my style, But when it comes to these boxers, man, the fans are just cruel. And especially someone like Clarissa Shields, who's very vocal. And she already lost to Savannah Marshall in the amateurs. I mean, Clarissa Shields, I think it was 64 wins, 1 loss. Her 1 loss was to Savannah Marshall. I could see it bothering one of them to the point to where they may have to take a little time off and make sure they surround themselves with a positive circle, a positive community, man, to keep them postured and a healthy mental posture. Because if not, they could go down the Jermaine Taylor route, and we don't want to see that. But nevertheless, when we talk about Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields, this fight could potentially, really outdo what Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano did. I mean, this fight is on track to break a lot of records. Like, this is a huge fight, still being hosted out there in the UK, which is great. But this is one of those fights. They need to start really pushing it and pumping it, man, because they have time to do it. But this fight for this undisputed distinction with the storyline, this fight can go on to be huge. And I'm going to tell you, not sure what the purses are going to be at this moment, but I really hope that these ladies can get paid, like $5 to $8 million, $10 million. Like, I really would like to see them get paid that kind of money. But we know that that's just wishful thinking. But I'm going to be optimistic and say that Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano kind of set the stage and created the platform for these two to go on and do bigger numbers and receive a bigger fight purse. Because when you talk about Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, they had a sellout crowd of 19,147 people. So that's a lot of people. And in turn, that's over, $1.3 million. So that's ticket sales alone. And then you talk about the live gate, you talk about the viewers. There was like over 600, million viewers. Let me see what it said, man. I think like 600 million viewers or something like that. Something crazy. Not 600 million, 1.5 million. 1.5 million viewers on the DAZN streaming app. Now, you just think about that. And there's another report that came out. That's where I'm getting the 600 million from, which sounds like crap to me, but supposedly it was with that event alone, and for the last 2 years, total revenues for DAZN was like 600 million, but that event had a lot to do with getting it to that $600 million mark. Sounds a bit exaggerated to me. How the hell 600 million is a lot of money? So the last 2 years, but then again, I don't know, and they don't really talk about it, but that number was thrown out there on one of the websites on DAZN, the DAZN website, and I just thought that was interesting, but it didn't really seem, like that was plausible for a 2 year time span with the type of events they're having on the DAZN app to generate over $600 million in revenue. Like, that's a lot of damn money. 60 million? Okay, but 600 million? I just don't see that. But Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall, fans are choosing a side right now. It's already happening. And as we get closer to the fight, it's going to continue to happen, and it's probably going to start to get a little ugly. Because right now you have, of course, the UK fans. They're going to be loyal, and they're going to support Savannah Marshall. And then you have the American fans who kind of segmented, and we're kind of fragmented over here. And that's just a result of, that's just how the demographics are over here. You got people up north, down south, east, and west. Then you start taking in, all the other, the contrast amongst the demographics, and then people just kind of remain segmented, and not everybody's on the same accord when it comes to American fighter fighting someone from another country. Not everybody gets behind the American fighter. Like, you don't see that kind of patriotism and kind of loyalty over here in the U.S. like you'd find with people from other countries. Like, they ride and die with their countrymen, and that's just, you don't find that over here in the United States so much. Now, it does happen, but not the way it happens in like UK or Mexico or, almost any other country, and I'm not speaking out of my ass, I'm talking from all the places that I've traveled, that I've lived, being first generation born on this side of the pond, and I noticed, that's one thing that I noticed, especially all the traveling I did over 25 years, man. It's like it doesn't matter whether they like you or not. Your fellow countrymen can talk shit about you. Your fellow countrymen can joke you. Your fellow countrymen can bash you. But when it comes to anyone outside of that circle, that's a no-go. They're going to get behind you. A good example is Eddie Hearn. At the end of the day, people out there in the UK, they bash him, they joke him, they clown him, but they're not going to allow nobody else to come in, man, and try to shred him. And when it comes to the athletes, they're going to get behind them. Puerto Rico, Mexico, you see it everywhere. And in the United States, they do. We do it over here, but I just don't think it's as prevalent. And I just don't think there's, across the entire nation, that sense of honor and pride when you have somebody going out to represent the country in a sporting event. And I think that's a little, for me, dissatisfying. I understand it, especially after 25 years of what I was doing. I kind of seen a little bit of everything. But at the end of the day, when it comes to Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields, I think you're going to see a lot of American flags waving and supporting Clarissa. And I think you're going to see definitely a lot of the UK flags getting behind Savannah Marshall. I think you're going to see all fans getting behind both of them as women, which I think is extremely important as well. And what I think is the most important going forward is that everyone who's going to be watching this fight, no matter what side you're on, that we keep it very respectful and we don't let it get ugly. Because when I look at these two, I see two athletes. I see two women. I don't really get caught up in, nationality and the other things. That's just not my style. But there are some people who are going to do that. But let's just hope that it stays clean, it stays respectful. Because what these two athletes are about to do is something historic. And they're going to be there to entertain us. And I think we should just show appreciation for them. But I do think that they can go on and break a lot of records. I'm not sure what stadium they're going to be fighting in, but if you figure almost 20,000 seats sold up there in New York, it's going to be out there in England somewhere. There's two different places, I think Newcastle and somewhere else. But anyway, if they get them in an 80,000 seat stadium, they would sell that out no problem. The fans are going to turn out. And I think with that, Clarissa Shields will be at a disadvantage because she's going to be, it's almost like, Devin Haney going over to Australia. The Australians, I don't know if you guys saw the press conference with Devin Haney and Kambosos from today. And they were shouting all kind of stuff at Devin Haney. Nothing too crazy, but like you can just feel the intensity in there. Like they want Kambosos to win that fight. And, that's just what I was talking about, man. Just the guys just being very loyal to their fellow countrymen, man, the patriotism, and like they're going to support them, and they're going to make you uncomfortable as hell. But Devin Haney looked cool, calm, cool, and collected because he doesn't get into all the back and forth, the BS. That's not him. Clarissa Shields, I could see her getting caught up in that because she's very vocal, and they have characters out there in England, and people are gonna get at her. They're gonna say things to her, and they're gonna get her worked up. She just has to have thick skin and just understand she's there to do a job and do her job. Not going to be a very easy job, in my opinion, because the fight is one thing, but all the other things outside of the ring, the distractions, the hecklers, hearing all those people cheer for your opponent. Now, Clarissa Shields has fought on different stages, different levels. She's fought in MMA, all the Olympics, being a professional, undisputed in 3 different weight divisions. That is unheard of, man. That's unheard of. Clarissa Shields has done things that Canelo is trying to do, and Canelo's getting paid $90 million for the fight. And Clarissa Shields can't even get, she can't even get $2-3 million. So when you think about what Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor did, what Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall about to do, they're paving the way. Not sure if they will see it. They should, especially when you have Eddie Hearn, Jake Paul, a lot of other people who are key decision makers in boxing, paying attention to women's boxing, and want to ensure they get paid equally. But these ladies should see huge fight purses in the future. But if not, fights like this, these ladies are definitely paving the way for those other female fighters coming up after them. But I think both of them are still young enough to where in the next couple of years, they'll still be around, they should still be fighting, and they can start seeing women commanding and receiving handsome fight purses. Hopefully in the 8-figure range. I think that would be outstanding. But yet to be seen, but I think they're definitely on their way. But again, people, this, like the Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano fight, to me is going to be a moment in time. Now, I already talked about fight predictions and stuff like that. We talked about the styles. There are some people who just feel Savannah Marshall just has what it takes. Other people feel that Shields has what it takes. So I think we'll find out in September. But the one thing that I'm most concerned about is just this staying clean and staying respectful. And the two ladies, I'm not worried about how they're going to treat each other. I'm just talking about fans and other people, man, who just want to draw attention to stuff that doesn't matter. Let's keep it to what these women bring to the table, to their talent, and the fact that these women, one of them is going to end up in the same lane as the Dick Tigers, as the Carlos Monzons, as the Haglers, Hopkins, Jermaine Taylors. And that's a huge accomplishment. And you know what? This is something 5 years ago, if these women would have done and fought and became undisputed in this middleweight division, it probably wouldn't even have got recognized the way it's getting recognized right now. So women's boxing has come a long way. It still has a long way to go. But I just think that we need to do our part to make sure we hold them in the same regard as we do the male boxers, and allow them to go back and forth, man, and start things up, because they're doing it for our entertainment, and can't ask for more. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and leave it as that. I already said I think this boils down to who has the better brain. Is it Marshall? Is it Shields? They both have unbelievable talent, but it really boils down to the better brain, the best brain in that ring. And like I've said before, I'll tell you again, it's not the best fighter who wins in boxing matches. It's the fighter who boxes or fights the best. That's who. So we'll see who has the best brain in that ring to ensure they fight the best on that night. And that's who's going to be victorious. That being said, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Shout out to all the veterans. Y'all keep safe. I'm in the break.